Welcome back to this series of videos on the World Domination Custom Cabinetry app. Today we're going to be looking at the financials. But before we jump into the financials portion, I do want to touch on a couple things that I may or may not have touched on earlier. So you notice this background is black and the letters mostly are white at this point, and in all the other videos the background was white and all the letters were black or colored. In the settings portion of this program, under appearance, you have the ability to have this dark system or light system. So the light is what we've been looking at and the dark is what we're going to look at today, just so you can see how that is. So what I found when I upgraded to 4K monitors is they were so bright that if I worked in the evenings, it was kind of hard to go to sleep at night. It was really intense on my eyes. So I've switched to this dark mode. I didn't like it at first, but I've gotten used to it. You may like it, you may not. So that's just kind of a settings thing that you can get to. Also, as you start working with some things like these financials, these grids get kind of big or wide and you can't see everything without scrolling. And even if I do get rid of this menu structure, you still would have to scroll some of these, but it helps sometimes. So this menu structure is adjustable in the sense that you can unpin it. So close the sidebar, clicking on these arrows that are pointed to the left. And as soon as you float off of it, it goes away. If you need it back, you just float over here to the left side. Now, at this point, it's unpinned, so if I float, it goes away, but I can come in here and grab it and use it. If I want to repin it and I float back up here to where these double arrows are pointed to the right, that will repin it. So we'll do the rest of this video tutorial with that off so we can see as many of these numbers as we can. So I'm on the financials page. From this navigation, you can see we've kind of come down this list. We went through instructions, companies, contacts, projects, rooms, and now we're on financials. And there'll be one more video past this one called processes. I apologize for the time it's taken. I told you on an earlier video that it would be weeks, not months, till this was released. But I have really struggled with this financials and how to explain it. So what I've settled on is that this is not something I can teach you in, at least throughput accounting is not something I can teach you in a single video or even a couple videos. So if you want to learn more about that process, we can do one-on-one sessions. You could join either of the good profit groups. There's multiple ways of learning about throughput accounting. I even have on my website the ability for you to schedule one-on-one sessions at any time that works for you, and we'll do remote sessions if you're close enough. We'll do local sessions, or if I need to travel to you, I've done that with people too. So that's an option, but we're going to go over financials today. And just understand, I am not teaching you throughput accounting. I'm teaching you how to use the financials portion of this app if you want to. If you never use this portion of the app, it is not going to diminish the value of the project management that you can do with it and some of the other things that you can do with it. So you could just choose to ignore this portion. But if you want to use this, there are some things you need to learn, and it's not hard, but it will take some time to learn Notion. It'll take some time to learn throughput accounting. It'll take some time to edit and modify your QuickBooks to be able to make this work for you, to be able to go to a QuickBooks report, print that out, and bring that data into here. So just know that. Here's another little feature of Notion that I've not been using in other places of this particular app, but I use it a lot in other apps, and that's just the table of contents. So wherever you have a header 1, 2, or 3 will show up here, and of course these are headers 1s or 2s, and then these are 2s or 3s depending on which ones these are. So if you have a 1 and then you put a 2, it will indent it, and if I had a header 1, 2, and 3, this third one would be even further indented. So it's a pretty cool way to be able to jump down to where you want to go. And this particular thing, a lot of the times you'll just be doing this, just jumping right down here to the bottom and looking at this. But then if you need to go back to the top, and I can even put a button down here that would take you back to the top, but I don't think you'll be doing that enough that that's worthwhile. So let's scroll back to the top. Again, we could jump down from the table of contents, and let's just go over this real quick. So we have some links to the areas below here as well. That's just simply because these databases actually live on this page. This is going to take you to the same place that is. This is going to take you to the same place that is. So the table of contents is not as useful here, but I did want to be able to jump to this very bottom is why I'm using it here, and I don't have that option with just these links. So we basically have these 3 sections, and this first section actually is made up of 2 databases, and these are portals into databases that exist in other places. So they're not shown up here because we're looking at a portal of another database. So right here we're looking at rooms, and right here we're looking at rooms. But in this case we're looking at a grid view, and here we're looking at a calendar view. Our objective here is to actually manage this column. So a lot of this is the byproduct of this job living in the World Domination Custom Cabinetry app. So if these projects and rooms live in the app, then they will show up here in this portal. Now right now I'm looking at a view that has been filtered right here at the filter to look in the month of March. So it's saying if any of these projects have a delivery date that is on or after March 1st and is on or before March 31st. So all of these fall within that range, and you can change these filters. I mean, you can have views specific. So here we've got a view for each month, and those probably should have the year after them. I'm working with a single year as I'm doing this, but this should probably say April of 2021, March of 2021, and then back here they should say 2020. Totally up to you. You could reuse them. If you didn't put the year, you could just go back and edit the filters for those and use them on the following year. And then you could have one that's just all. I think I do. Yeah. So I have a view all, which is really long when you do that. It shows every single project that you've done forever at that point. So what we're seeing here are the project. Here's the project name, and this is the link to the project. This is the master bath for this particular Chapman Lot 121. This project supposedly is at check field measure and is supposed to deliver on March 4th. If you peek down here, you see I'm actually into April. I'm not keeping all this up to date because it's not necessary. These are all made up jobs anyway. So we're going to pretend we're working in March right now instead of in April, because I didn't want to have to go through all of the work to update all these months. And so we're just going to work through this like we're working in the middle or latter part of March. And March is not completely built out. Once we look down here at the calendar, this calendar is more for reference than anything else, because this is what we're trying to manage, is this month build. We don't want to fill this in. Like if we open up any one of these projects, and you can see here we can open them up here in this name column. You see the open option, but we can also click on any of these projects down here and open them in a window and see everything about this project here, or all the data about this project anyway. And we've got the delivery date and then the month build, and this is what we're trying to manage right here. And so it is helpful to be able to see where they're at in the delivery schedule. I mean, you can see it here. You see the delivery date here. You know which month to place this in. But when you answer this question or link this to this month build, that's what makes the bottom portion of this work. This is a key field right here. The month build makes it show up. So as long as there's nothing here, even though this says the delivery date is in March, if there's nothing here, when we get down to the bottom and we start looking at total variable expenses or operating costs, those types of things, they won't be in there if this is not answered. So we see for these 4 rooms for this project that they're all going to fall in March. Some of them are going to be delivered on March 4th, some of them on March 9th, some of them on March 11th, and some of them on March 18th. And here's the actual price. Here's the cabinet quantities for all these projects. As we scroll down, again, this is for reference only, but you can also use it to jump into the job if you want to do it that way, and set that to this March date. All right, so that's all this is for. And you have instructions here above each one of these. There's these little expand for instructions. Click on this, and I kind of walk you through it as best I can. This one's just for reference, so there's not a lot of instructions here. This one would have more instructions simply because it's not just for reference, but it's kind of a 2-step thing here, what you do with a note telling you why you do what you're doing. And then if we scroll down to this next section, so the top 2 are all about sales. What did you sell to someone? Now we're getting down to what does it cost you to operate? And there's 2 components of sales. There's the operating expense, the nut, the thing that you have to overcome every month. And so we want to put these in one of 2 ways. And I have 2 examples here of how you can do it. So you see all of these are zeroed out. So I'm not using this line by line, how much did we spend on autos, communications, insurance, maintenance. I'm not using this right now. It's all here. I could use it if I wanted to, but I'm not using it right now. I'm using this single line for March. So all of these are set for March, but I'm just using this one. If you never want to use these, don't duplicate them past the first month you do this. Just duplicate this one line by going to the 6 dots here. If I was going to do April, and I would say duplicate, and then all I would do is just change this month to April, and then I would put in the new number. So you can let this do the math for you if you wanted to by coming here and putting all these in. But if you know what this is, if you can pull this out of your accounting package, whether that's QuickBooks or Peachtree or some other accounting package, just need to know what this number is. The operating expenses does not include the materials for the project. So it's just the operating expenses. Now this would be all the payroll unless they're a subcontractor like an installer that works for other people as well. Any labor to manufacture the cabinet should be in this number in throughput accounting. We also give you the ability, if you're going to work through this methodology, I've got this increase decrease column here where you can adjust. So you're basically saying, I need to do better on this. I need to decrease whatever I'm spending on the wages for admin. And these can be different ones. And actually these should be different ones. I probably didn't change these since I changed the columns. Like this would probably be wages sales, and then this one would probably be wages design, and this one would probably be engineering, and this one would probably be production. So we're basically saying here, I need to spend more on engineering and I need to decrease the admin costs. So you have that ability. You might come in here and say, hey, I need to spend less on computers and information systems and things like that, or I need to reduce my costs here and I need to expand my costs there, whatever that thing is. This just gives you a column to kind of reference of what you want to do there. So if you were putting in all the individual pieces here, you would get your sum here. The sum right now is that we put it in as 1. So it is one or the other. Don't put a number here and fill all these in. Put a 0 there and fill all these in if you want the details. But if you don't want the details here, they're going to live in QuickBooks, then just put in this 1 number, and then for the next month, duplicate this and fill it in for that and change the dates. And then your total variable costs, and I have given quite a bit of instruction for this one. So this is kind of the reason I'm saying that just one video or even a series of a few videos is not an effective way to teach someone throughput accounting if you've never done throughput accounting. You really need some one-on-one sessions, and over a series of time. You can't learn it in a single sitting. It's something that you have to learn over a period of time. But here's the methodology that we've got going on here. So you could come in here and do the same thing. You see these months, the total variable costs for these months, or expenses for these months. This one was put in as $16,000. This is all the total variable costs. So this was all the drawer guides, all the hinges, all the wood, anything you bought, doors, drawer fronts, anything you bought to turn into cabinets, or anything that you outsourced to someone else to become a part of your cabinet. So the way total variable costs work is, total variable cost is anything that goes up if you sell one more cabinet, or down if you sell one less cabinet. So that's the way to think of these. And so rent doesn't classify as that. The gas bill and the water bill and labor. Some people would try to attribute labor to specific projects. You just can't do it. Those are operating expenses. But total variable costs, you don't lay somebody off just because your sales are $1,000 less one month than the next. And you don't necessarily hire somebody just because your sales are up or down. And one cabinet definitely doesn't influence your headcount in your shop. So those are operating expenses. Total variable expenses are the things that change when you sell one more or one less. And I've given some instructions in this list of what you would do with QuickBooks to try to get these numbers from QuickBooks. So these things would be in the cost of sales, but QuickBooks is bad about having labor parts in there as well, and you don't want any labor parts in the cost of sales if you want to use it for this. One more thing about this is, so we've done these as all, in other words, we've got a single line item. These two I set as 0 just so you can see them below what happens when I do that, because there's another alternative to this. But we have these two right here that were actually attributed to an outsourced component part company and an outsourced door company. And so this is actually carrying the cost for the doors, the crown molding, the light rail, and all of that being pre-finished. And these are all the parts for the cabinets. And if you don't do it that way, that's fine. But if you happen to be a company that does a lot of that, you can get down to this level. You could literally come in here and put in a line item for the plywood you bought, and then the functional hardware, and then the decorative hardware. You can create as many line items for a single month. And you see here we've got 2 line items for March, but each one of these is for an individual month. So it could be a single line item for the whole month, or you could break them down. As long as you list them in the same month, you'll be able to have all of the items for a single month attributed together as we get down to this next section. Really and truly, this next section is 1, but it's broken into 3. Now, I don't have anything out into the future at this point. Typically, you would have 2 or 3 months because you're working on the jobs that are upcoming. So, but I don't have anything out there. So this is just empty. This is future months, current month, and again, we're in April, but it's still looking at this. I actually changed the filter so it would continue to look at March. And I haven't even built out March all the way, so we're kind of pretending we're in March, not in April. So you see how I've got a negative net profit because I haven't sold the whole month. If we look back at that calendar, we'll see that there's several more weeks that I could sell a few more jobs in. And that's what we're wanting to see, the approach of this above the line. We're kind of watching ourselves approach this net profit being negative to, at some point every month, we overcome that overhead number and we start making money. So that's what the objective is, to be able to visualize this happening. So this month would be to watch this thing as you sell additional jobs, and this be a little motivator to say, hey, it's time to get out and sell some projects. So this is looking at the past 12 months, and again we see March in here as a negative month, and we have a lot of good months, but we have an average of 20 because we got a -3 there. This would be much higher if this -3 weren't here. If it were up here with these others, we would have much better return here, or in the net profit. So what we're seeing here is, looks like May of 2020 through about March of 2021. And we're seeing the sales here, and the sales are captured here. You see this has the little hourglass in front of it, and that says this is a lookup field. And what that means is it's looking at those two areas at the very top that we looked at earlier, where we saw the calendar and the grid that is a single portal into the rooms. And so these are the costs for those rooms for the whole month. It's tallying up everything that was listed for the month of March, 51,232. It's tallying those up in this lookup field. So those are all the various rooms that make up the sales for that month. Then we have another lookup that's looking at, you see here it says TVC, so total variable cost. So this one's looking up here at this section and saying, is there something there for this month? So here we see November, December, January, February, March. And if we look back down here at this one, we see that this one is $25,616, and that happens to be for March. So if we come back up here to March, what that is these two numbers added together, March and March. So this 19,466 and 6150 added together would equal this 25,616. Then we also have this percentage methodology, and you can see it kind of varies through here. So this is a business model that a lot of cabinet makers do not pursue. It's one that I did pursue, and there's like two extremes. So we make everything in our plant, and then there's the other extreme. We don't make anything in our plant. We buy everything and assemble it and install it. So we focus on sales, and we have a very low overhead and very low investment. The other side of the spectrum is we make everything, so we have lots of equipment and lots of people. We kept a few people, and we had all the machinery, but we outsourced when our sales were at certain trigger points. And so when we outsourced everything, and of course this one is totally unrealistic because we haven't sold out the month yet. We wouldn't ever choose to outsource everything on a month that was only 51,000 if our target was 80,000. So that would be foolish. But you see how this total variable cost, the material costs for the month, vary in percentage. And that's because on these high months, we bought everything so that the same three people could do the work that they did on the $60,000 month, where our material cost was only 32 because we did a lot of things in-house. And so we bought plywood and we built the cabinet ourselves, versus back up here, we might have bought all the cabinet parts from another 232 guy or from Cabinetch or somebody like that. So this is a moving target for that type of business model, but for most people, this would be a single number, 30, 32, 33, 40, 50, if you're an all outsource model, whatever that is, this would be a consistent thing. For us, it was a moving thing because we chose that business model. But I'm not taking this number and using it, I'm just displaying it for you. And I'm not using this number, I'm just displaying it for you. So this number is taking this sales and saying it's 50% of that number is what this is. So anytime you see this little character here, that's saying this is a calculated column. So this column is a lookup. This is a lookup looking up from the sales. This one's looking up from that total variable cost grid. This one is something you're just entering a number into. It's just a number, so you see the number sign there, and so you're entering whatever your percentage is. If you put nothing here, then it'll just transfer this number over to here. But right now, the math for this is saying what is that number right there minus this 50%. So it's ignoring that number right there. It's coming up with the same number because it's the same math. But this number is 50% of that number, or 32% of that number, or 50%, or 45, or whatever that percentage of that number as you go down through this list. What I have here is a column where you actually physically enter which one you want to use. Now in this case, they're the same number, so there's no question. But you see here that I used 20,000 here from the roll-up and ignored this calculation here. Here I used the calculation. So you can use either number, whichever one seems to make sense to you. And you typically will settle on one and use that all the time. But you're going to type a number in to come up with your total variable costs based on either you tracking them in QuickBooks and transferring them over here, or you actually track them in here. And then throughput is the revenue, sales, minus this number we entered. So we had $51,232 in sales, and then we had half of that as total variable cost, so the other half is throughput. Throughput's the real number. That's what cabinet makers should talk about when they talk about the size of their company, because that material is just a pass-through. All those things that come into our company to pay for materials are not our money, just like payroll is not our money. Just like payroll tax is not our money. It's a pass-through. We get that money in, and then we got to give it to someone else. So Throughput's the real deal. This is what our revenue in our company really and truly is. This is the top line, but throughput is the real sales for your company or the real revenue for your company. So we had 25,000 in throughput and we had 27,270. So our overhead is actually more than our throughput. So we actually lost money, 3%. We've lost $1,600. But again, we have several more weeks of sales to sell out this month and to improve that. And obviously this number would be much lower, because if it ends up being a month that's not $117,000 or $100,000 or something like that, or $95,000, it's not going to be 50% because we're going to bring those things in-house. So that's how all of this is working. It's drawing things from these areas above. Totally up to you how you track them, and it's totally up to you whether you even use this section. I have no problem with you ignoring this section if you just really want the project management portion of this, tracking rooms, helping your employees in the production management. All of those things are valid reasons to use this app. This is a great way to make yourself profitable. If you struggle with phantom profits, profits that your accountant tells you at the end of the year you made a 15 or 20 or 30% profit, and you don't know where that money is, it's not in your personal bank account, you have nothing to show for it, this will solve that problem if you'll use this methodology. So that's it for this session. I hope you found that useful, and we're going to do one more session, and that session will be on the processes section. So think of that as a reimagined operations manual, and I think it's important that you use that portion of it to manage your business, and I think you'll be excited to see how that works. We used an operations manual, or standard operating procedures, whatever you want to call it, for years and years and years in my company, and I think you'll be excited to see that it becomes job or room specific, or transfer batch, process batch, however you want to look at that, so that you can have check boxes. Typically our operations manual is a bunch of bullet points, and it's really hard to keep your place if you're needing to follow those. Like if you're engineering a job and you have a checklist of things you need to do as an engineer, or you're installing a project and you want to let everybody at the plant know where you're at in that process, and you also want to let them know early on that, hey, we're going to need a couple more pieces of scribe mold. Can you go ahead and get those finished so tomorrow we can leave with those, rather than telling you tomorrow morning that we need them and having to come back another day, that kind of thing. So this processes will be what we're doing next. So that's it for financials, and next up we'll do the processes. Thanks for watching.